The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. I'm Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck. We're from BuffaloSportsPage.com along with the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti. Mike loves baseball. And
not so much last night, though.
As we record this a day after the Reyes...
The massacre.
The Mets got massacred. But Reyes on the mound, we had a lot of fun talking about it before we started recording. And just what he was able to
leave it to the Mets to always do something interesting, Mike. You know, it may not be good, but it's usually always interesting. And as a guy who goes back to the 70s as a Mets fan, I can speak to that.
Yeah, that wasn't boring, that's for sure. I'd prefer they be scoring 25 runs, but if you're going to have to watch a baseball game in the end of July, I guess that's not a bad watch.
Yeah. All right, so baseball's where we're going to begin with this because as we record this on August 1st, it is the day after the end of the quote-unquote trade deadline, and we know that trades will still continue, but trades without waivers expired last night. There was a lot of activity, more activity than you thought, and I guess before we get into the specifics, Mike, was the activity driven by need or by money?
Yeah, so it's both. I posted a piece this morning where it's really a pretty even split this year. To your point, the post that I put together sort of went back to July 1st. I tracked it basically the whole month of July because really things got going pretty early this year. 50 trades. 50 trades posted in July. It's a lot. And most of them had some sort of major leaguer moving. It wasn't just kind of tick-for-tack trades. There were plenty of really solid deals. A lot of them made a ton of sense. I think a lot of them were...
Well, real quick, to answer why, the two things that jump into my head was, you said it, solid deals for need, and I think the other part of it, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, is what we're seeing in all sports right now, which is teams that realize they are not in the mix, that have players that they don't have long-term plans for, that are making too much money. They're more than happy and more than willing to move them out, and I think we're seeing that across the board in every sport now.
There has been a push in every sport, I think, to not fall in love with anybody. And that's fine. If it's a business, and we're going to talk about part of how the business sort of came to its worst maybe this week too, but we'll get to that in a bit. But it's a business, and I think most teams are still looking at it that way. An example of where this sort of went wrong is maybe the Phillies, right? Remember the Phillies, the Utley, Ryan Howard Phillies, Jason Worth Phillies?
Yes.
That's a team that held on maybe 4 years too long, and we all look at that and they had some great years and they were in contention, those last 4 years, but that's like the last example of a team saying, we can still do it. It's like the Kobe Bryant thing. There's no reason for them to sign Kobe Bryant back those last 2 years at $30 million a year, but that's like a gift to him. Right. Like the Phillies staying together was like a gift to the Philadelphia fans. That stuff's gone. Yeah. Those days are gone. This is an example of that. This is an example of every single team had some sort of movement, and it's either for a buy or sell purpose, and it's either for needing to make a postseason push this year, setting yourself up for a postseason push next year, which I think a few teams really did nicely, or just shedding payroll, which is the easiest way to do it this time of year.
All right, well, let's talk about who made the big moves thus far, again, because some moves can happen through waivers. Mm-hmm. Pirates, big splash.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't looked at the standings in a while, that one maybe threw a lot of people off because they just assumed the Pirates are out of it. And I think the Pirates maybe assumed they'd be out of it because they did some selling before the year to sort of shed themselves of some core, right? The McCutchens and the Garrett Coles. I mean, that's basically your top two, veteran players. So I'm not sure they had many expectations to be where they are right now, but they're there. They're in the wild card spot, and at least hanging around it. And the teams around them are sort of, floundering a little bit. So they're in a really good spot. But this was not a postseason push move. I mean, they got arguably the best player of any team in Chris Archer, who has 3.5 years, $26 million left, and he's their ace now. That's a pretty good deal for an ace. So it's a great move. And on the flip side, they got rid of two prospect players, Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, who, for all intents and purposes, I think were maybe on the backside of their potential. I think a lot of people had really high expectations for both of them, and I think the buzz on both was maybe they're more busts than not. So I think
go to Tampa.
Yes. I think it's a pretty strong move for Pittsburgh, not only to get Archer, but to move those guys before the bust was sort of revealed, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Yeah. So to me, they're maybe the 1A, 1B winner of this deadline, along with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who, man, oh man, if you haven't looked at their lineup this morning, boy, they got better. And I'm not sure they even needed to get better, but they got better. Obviously, they've added Machado in the past few weeks, but they added Brian Dozier, only the best productive second baseman,
good player, the guy you love,
most
to
underrated
watch.
productive hitter in baseball over the past 5 years. I mean, just power, speed, great defense. I mean,
it's a World Series team from last year that just acquired their middle infield.
Yes,
which is
they
weird.
They lost their stud shortstop for the year and decided, we'll go get the best shortstop free agent available. And then they decided to go and upgrade their second base position with the best available second baseman. So they're completely primed to go. They've got some pitching questions. They addressed a little bit, in terms of the relief. They're by far the NL favorites right now, based on what they've done and where they were already. So to me, those are the two teams that really did well these past few weeks in terms of the trade. If we flip to the American League, I thought the Indians did a good job. I'm not super in love with the outfield piece they added. I think they needed to maybe go a little bigger and swing a little higher. They brought in Leonis Martin from Detroit, who's had some injury issues, but is a decent five-tool player for them, especially defensively, where they really needed the help. But they made a splash with Brad Hand, a bullpen guy who's under term for, I think, 3 more years, which is a big deal because their back-of-the-end bullpen guys are expiring this year. So this is more of a win now and win later move for them. That was a big move. But I want to get to Houston. Because this is sort of that business discussion I think we need to have, right? That Houston did a few things, and for all intents, they did a good job filling some needs at catcher where they had some injuries, and they brought in a third baseman to sort of go with that as well. But the big name here is Robert Osuna, and if you don't know Robert Osuna, he was the young stud closer for the Toronto Blue Jays for the past few years, and he was popped 75 games for domestic violence. All right, it is what it is. Toronto was sort of dealing with that. They made some moves to counter that. No big deal. The problem is now that he's been traded, and he was traded during the suspension, which number one shouldn't be possible in my opinion.
I would agree with you on that.
I'm with you.
And number two, you've got a situation where if you're popped for PEDs, you serve your suspension, you get back out there, you can play, but there's no postseason for you. That's not the case for this, and I think that's another issue that should be brought up. That would have stopped this trade from happening immediately. Right? If you know that Robert Osuna can't be on your postseason roster, he's never a Houston Astro right now. So to me, those are the business sides of it that maybe need to be discussed on a grander level for the higher ups. But look at the Astros got a stud here. All right. Put all of his off-field incidents away. This is a young, really good closer. He made maybe the best team in the American League even better. He's going to be eligible for the postseason. He's going to come back in, I think, probably 2-3 days here and join that bullpen and be the big part of that bullpen. So you've got a World Series winning team that got better, and they did it with a little bit of sketchiness, right? It's a little bit of a
I
matter.
blame Major League Baseball for
of course.
this.
Of course.
Because again, like it or don't like it, and there's a lot of reasons not to like it. Houston played by the rules.
Look at
and if you're gonna leave the rules open, then there's gonna be an aggressive team that figures it can fight over the public pushback. That's where baseball needed to say, no, we're not going to let anybody do this.
So there's 2 points I want to make on that. Number one is we also have to blame the Blue Jays because if the Houston Astros were willing to give up assets to get this guy, why are the Blue Jays trading him in the first place? Right? I mean, what they gave up, wasn't really warranted, in terms of what they've lost. So Toronto sort of made a bad deal here, in my opinion. I don't know why they made any deal.
I think it be somebody else's problem.
Yeah, I think. But by what happened, it would be my guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they've got emotion, they've got empathy, but
Houston
not
doesn't.
That great,
right?
But Houston doesn't. So that's my point. It is the league's fault.
I don't even think it's empathy. I think it's not our problem anymore. That's to me that's a very cutthroat. Like you take them, we don't want to deal with them anymore.
And that's fine. And what he's done is awful, but. If I'm the business guy here, right? I'm a guy looking at numbers and math here. And if I'm Houston, what I hated most about this is that Houston didn't just come out and say, yeah, he's a 50 save guy, and we're in contention every year.
And we need
him. From a business standpoint, this was a no-brainer. He served his time. He's done. He did the crime. He served his time, and we're going to let him play baseball for us for the next 4 years because he's young and super cheap. I wish they would have just had the stones to say that, because that is what this is. He did something wrong.
Don't you suspect that in the boardroom of the Houston Astros that exactly was the decision? And then when they said, okay, can we do this? Then somebody else said, well, how do we deal with all the other issues that are around?
But by not saying it that way, you're leaving yourself open for all these interpretations, right? Well, you're letting yourself get involved in the legal side of it. Whereas all you have to say is, this is a baseball move. Toronto wanted to let him go. We decided that he served his time. We're hoping that he can have better values going forward. And from a baseball standpoint, he's one of the best closers in baseball, and now he's a Houston Astro.
I can tell you,
I'd be a terrible GM, but
no GM would ever come right out and say that. That's for sure. Well, actually, the only one would, and he got canned. That'd probably be Murray, the guy from the Sabres, the former Sabres GM.
There's been some bad ones. Don't worry.
Said some things bluntly, but they look at on the ice, and that's pretty much it, right? I mean, they all know the baggage that comes with it, and there's no secrets in these leagues about all these things, and they just look at, hey, within the rules, he suspended, what you said, served his time, eligible to play now, we made our team stronger, that's my job. End of story. That's what pro sports has been all about for many, 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 many years. With that. All right, there are some other players to discuss, and one that's still out there that didn't go. But I want to talk about there was a lot of starting pitching movement. Archer, you mentioned Hamels got traded a little earlier. What about DeGrom?
Yeah.
Who did not go from the Mets?
Yeah, so I think maybe after last night, the Mets might be regretting
DeGrom may be regretting not having
selling parts here, but. The Mets kind of held still. They shopped their expiring reliever and Familia to the Athletics, and that was really they shopped Asdrubal Cabrera to the Phillies, which was sort of a no-brainer move for them. He was going to go somewhere, but the pitching staff all remains, right, and the big four pitchers appear to be back. Though I don't know if Steven Matz can recover from last night. We'll see. But DeGrom, Syndergaard, Wheeler, Matz, all still a Met, all still under term for next year. So it appears they're going to keep rolling with this. I wouldn't shut down the opportunity for DeGrom to get moved this winter. I think it's going to be pay me $200 million or get me the hell out of here, and that's definitely warranted. This is a guy who's in the Cy Young conversation every year. He's getting up there in age. He needs his contract now because Father Time is calling. The Mets are getting worse, seemingly. So it's sort of a backwards approach for where his career is headed.
I blame Bernie Madoff for all of this.
Yes. I blame the Wilpons. I think the ownership has been...
And you're not... There's some truth to what you're saying, Kevin.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, no.
It has handcuffed that franchise financially. So what I keep thinking of, and what you just said is very interesting, because on this podcast, we talk a lot about the cutthroat, no emotional part of what sports has become. And to me, what the Mets are doing is belies that in the fact that we're not just shipping out all of our assets because we're bad. I would assume the Mets are saying, if we're ever going to get good, it's going to be because of those four guys. And we need to keep those four pitchers, because if we have good starting pitchers and we make good moves around them, then we can get good again. And that's so opposite of the way that we talk here and that a lot of the leagues operate now. And I actually give them credit for not necessarily doing what everybody else is doing.
And you're dead on, but you're missing maybe the most important point, which is all four of these guys are dirt cheap right now. They're dirt cheap. I mean, this is a four-man rotation that costs like $20 million.
That's crazy unrealistic. Yes.
It's not like they're just saying these guys are great and they look like video game pitchers out there and we want to keep them on the roster. I mean, these guys are – this is the window right now, right? If you're going to do it, you do it now because you've got a starting rotation that costs the amount of one home run.
Because when all those guys need to get signed, it'll be a four-man rotation at about $250 million.
And I think where I'm headed here is that we're sort of here. DeGrom and his agent have basically said, all right, it's time to get me $30 million a year, and if you're not going to do it, get me out of here to somebody who will. So, like I said, it didn't happen before this deadline. I think DeGrom will run its course and try to win a Cy Young for the next 2 months in New York. But I think maybe once the winter hits, you're going to start to hear trade talks intensify, unless, like I said, the Mets go out and offer 5 for 150 on.
Well, at some point, you have to keep your good players, right? I mean, at some point, teams have to start doing that, don't they?
And like I said, we've sort of seen Steven Matz get knocked around here. Syndergaard's been hurt every 7 days. It'd be tough for me to see them not at least make a significant offer to Jacob deGrom, who has been nothing but a good soldier through all of this.
Right. All right. The other name that we want to talk about, should I have been surprised that Bryce Harper's name was floated around in some trade talks? I guess in this day and age, I shouldn't be surprised about any of it, Kevin.
We actually talked about trading you, Paul. Mike and I did. We floated it out there. I should
not be surprised. Then,
we put it out there to some other.
I'm not sure you get a whole lot of good offers in return.
Richard Deitch didn't want you.
The Athletic, nothing.
Yeah, Jay Moore said no thanks.
Well,
anyway, all right. I'm sorry. I digress.
I don't know. I've been under the impression that Harper's name should have been out there months ago, because I think if you know you can't sign him, then you've at least got to know what you can get, right? So I'm hoping that the Nationals didn't wait until 2 days ago to actually start doing their due diligence on this, because of course the return's not going to be great when they know the deadline's right there. I'm under the business side of this, right? So I look at this as you're 5.5 games out. Yes, you just demolished the Mets last night, but that's not saying much. If you know you can't sign him, and they're the only people that know right now, right? I mean, Harper and his camp kind of know what they're going to do, or know what they need in terms of the money. If the Washington Nationals know they can't sign him, even if they think they can get this thing to the finish line and get into the postseason, I think I would trade him. I think I would move him.
Financially, it's a no-brainer.
There's enough youth on that team right now, and the Trey Turners and the Juan Sotos, and they can bring up a Victor Robles. They've got youth to where, and these are A prospects. These are legitimate superstar caliber players. Are they Bryce Harper? I don't know, but I think anybody could hit 220 right now, right?
Right.
But look at the whole point of it is, yes, maybe you can get yourself into the postseason. I don't think you can win it. And isn't that what we care about here? Isn't that what really should matter? Shouldn't you look at yourself in the mirror and say, if we can't beat the Dodgers, which I'll be damned if they think they can beat the Dodgers right now, then you've got to get as much as possible for Bryce Harper, even if you can sign him back, right? We saw this with Chapman and the Yankees. The Yankees just decided, yeah, he's the best reliever in baseball, but that means we can get the most for him right now. Mm-hmm. And they traded him. They got 2 gigantic prospects who are currently on the starting roster right now, and they signed Chapman back 3 months later. I don't know why that's legal, but it's legal. And because it's legal and it's good business, that's something the Nationals should be entertaining right now. Even if they think they can't sign him, trade him. If you get him back, even better. If you don't get him back, you've gotten something for him, and you didn't really give up too much. Because like I said, there are kids waiting to play right there.
I think if you trade him, he's not coming back. Just
really?
My guess. Yeah. Just my guess.
You don't think he would understand the business side of it? I mean, Scott Boras has been through this before.
Yeah. Well, I think Scott Boras is probably pushing for him to be traded.
Yeah. And he's going to be traded to one of the marquee big money franchises where Bryce Harper's likely to say, I like it here a lot better.
I'm going to put my name out there with this. I think he was worth $7 million yesterday to be traded. Okay, that's how much he had left on that contract. That's too much for a rental for any team, right? Even the Dodgers wouldn't do that. I don't think. Machado cost them like 6-1. And you know what you're getting from Machado for 2.5 good months here. Harper, he's not playing his best ball, and he's worth $7 million. If you wait 3 weeks, that's going to be closer to $6 million, which is a little bit easier to swallow. I think a team like the Indians, who I just talked about, I didn't think they addressed the outfield position enough. They sort of got a good defensive guy, but they didn't really address the offensive production in the outfield that they needed to, because they've got injuries across the board out there. To me, that's the team. That's the team you put a Bryce Harper, who can sort of manage a decent right field out in Progressive Field, who adds on-base percentage and more home runs to that lineup, because you're going to have to hit home runs, because the Dodgers infield is going to hit 150 this year now. I mean, it's going to be
right.
It's going to be. We're not even talking about Puig and Matt Kemp out there,
well, yeah.
and Bellinger.
And how are they going to beat the Astros, right?
And the Astros.
They're going to beat them in the long
right.
ball.
So the Indians have addressed the bullpen. I put them with the Astros in terms of the bullpen matchup. I think they're going to have to go out and hit some more home runs. I just think that's something they're going to need to address. And if you get Bryce Harper at a lower price, and you don't have to give up both of your big prospects, I've heard both of them being floated in this discussion, but if you can make it one of your big prospects at a $6 million price, I think Cleveland's going to be in on Bryce Harper come mid-August.
Interesting.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Be awesome.
As we wrap up the baseball, Kevin, why do I keep thinking as we listen to Mike talk and we talk about it? I keep thinking back to the famous Jerry Seinfeld bit from probably 20 years ago, where he talked about sports as a fan, that all you do is root for laundry now, right? All you do is root for the uniform. We have talked about. Mike just rattled off some of the marquee players in the sport. How many kids in Washington, Virginia, Maryland have grown up wearing Bryce Harper jerseys and live for Bryce Harper? And as we talk about it strictly from a financial, it's tough to be a fan these days. And if you're a fan, you better root for laundry and not players anymore.
I got to tell you, though, that's one of the reasons I built this website, because I was getting pissed off that these players were leaving.
Yes.
I didn't understand the business side of it at all. So from a personal standpoint, that I've kind of dove into this whole process, and now I honestly understand it way too much. I'm addicted to it now, obviously, but that was something I needed to understand as a fan, as to why these guys there was so much movement, and there really wasn't back then. You had some guys who's remained with one team for a whole career. That doesn't happen anymore.
Nope.
But that's why I love seeing the retro market, right?
Sure.
You go to a ball game and you go to a Brewers game and someone's wearing a Gorman Thomas
I love
jersey.
it too. I love it.
All right, yes.
Yep, I love it.
Right? I mean,
And
'cause
frankly,
those guys are there forever.
those are the people that a lot of fans identify with, is the people that of their youth and that they grew up, or the guys back in the day who did play 10 years in a particular city.
But it was also, they played there because the free agent money wasn't as great. There wasn't as much movement. And guys also wanted to stay together to try to win, right? It wasn't. There wasn't like, I'm going to go here because I can win there. It's like, no. It used to be like, I'm going to improve so I can beat them.
But you didn't have hard caps and luxury taxes either, which is really why there's so much movement. It's just you can't afford to keep paying veterans, annually like they're doing. Eventually, it gets to the point where something's going to break. But it's almost like a reverse effect now with the jersey, right? Like we're in Buffalo here. Terrell Owens came for what? 7 minutes to Buffalo.
Yeah.
And, I know 15 people that bought his jersey. Because you want to memorialize the moment that Terrell Owens played for the Bills, right? So it's almost going backwards now. You've got to kind of get them while they're here, because it's going to be a blink of an eye.
Like I said, if you're a fan, I don't know. Do you buy a jersey? Do you invest?
Buy them all. Buy them all.
Do you invest in becoming the fan of a player anymore? These guys spend 2 years here, and then even if they're great, they get traded because of their contract and because of change in organization. I mean, it's hard to be the fan that we were when we were kids.
Do you have any baseball jerseys?
No, I do not. I only own one of mine. I've never been a big jersey guy. I owned a George Brett jersey because he was always my favorite player when I was growing up.
That's sweet. Mike?
I own a Jacob deGrom jersey.
There you go. See, what better
Guilty
example
as
could that
charged.
be?
It's going to be gone in December.
I would say that will be completely useless in soon.
And I'm talking non-autographed, like
All right,
memorabilia.
it is
stuff,
autographed,
right?
but I own
okay.
it. Yeah.
I have, and I got this when I
I have a Griffey jersey. I have 2 Griffey jerseys.
Okay.
That's my guy.
Junior?
Junior.
I have a jersey that I will no longer wear.
Okay.
But I have it of this guy. I'm holding up a starting lineup, Kirby Puckett.
Very
nice.
Right? But the problem was, what Kirby's no longer with us on this earth.
Right.
But the stories about Kirby, right? I mean, domestic violence, not cool, so I won't wear it anymore, right?
Yeah.
But is it
Friggin'
okay?
Twitter.
What is the age cutoff on wearing a jersey?
Yeah. So I went to a minor league baseball game last night, and I wanted to bring my glove, and my wife decided that was a bad idea because I'm 38 years old. Right, so that's sort of the discussion I had about that too. But I didn't bring it. There were a couple of balls near me. I would have used my beer cup, of course. But it's the same discussion, right?
Like I think once you pass 40,
fanboy.
I was going to say 30, 35, 30. In your 30s, I think you get much north of 30. I think it looks a little odd.
Yeah, I would even say that for football jerseys, if you're going to a football game. There are some grown men in their 50s wearing jerseys they have no business wearing.
That's okay.
I don't know.
It's okay.
I don't know.
Support your team.
You can support you can. There are other age appropriate apparel.
I want to know where the Velcro name jersey is. When are we doing? When is somebody doing this?
For a while, wasn't there a company, and I think they've gone under now, that was doing like a subscription jersey rental service where every month you would get a new jersey.
How did it go under?
I don't know. It's a great idea.
Where are you? Call us. We are in on this.
People probably kept stealing the jerseys. That's
a
probably
great idea.
That
way you're not locked into buying a jersey of a guy who's not going to be on your team.
No, but you keep the jersey. You just send a new Velcro piece to put a new name in the back.
I agree. If you're right, yes,
the number stays. Right? Like how many 26s have played for the Buffalo Sabres? Plenty.
Yeah.
You could have 4 Velcro strips, and you could change it out as needed.
Great idea.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Hey, real quick
Patent pending.
side note on the baseball glove. My 8-year-old went to a Bison's game, and I wouldn't let him bring his new glove because he already lost a glove this year.
Right. You knew he was going to lose.
I get that.
No, he already lost a glove this year, and so you're not bringing here. You can bring this old one. So it's a little kid glove. Ball went right off the top of the glove because it wasn't big enough. I wasn't at the game. That's all I heard about when he got home. If I had my regular glove, I would have caught it. And the guy behind him gave it to his kid.
Oh.
I'm like, my kid had it in his glove. Like, oh, well. All right.
All right. We mentioned football, and we're going to pivot here to football, right?
Yes. Let's hand off to football here because we have the training camp version of NFL positional spending that you have there. And then I also want to ask you a question about a certain defensive player in the league. But let's just talk about positional spending right now as it stands in camp. This is without cuts, guys being released,
Yeah, really. I took a quick look because we're sort of in the middle of it all here, and teams sort of have a roster in place, but it's the full 90-man roster. Obviously, there's going to be some significant cuts coming in the next 2 weeks, which we'll be tracking as much as possible. I'm basically looking for trends here at this point because every year I sort of look at these numbers and, obviously your quarterbacks are going to have a ton of money thrown at them, but there was sort of a little bit of relief there. And that's what I was sort of looking for. I was looking for how many teams, because of this recent, maybe the past 2 drafts, who have gone young and taken a quarterback in the top of the draft, where are we with cap spending and quarterbacks and really all the positions? And it's getting there, right? I think we're starting to see a flip where there's a few teams who have that window where the quarterback is cheap and they've spent their money in the trenches and maybe in the secondary for a few of those teams. And I like to look at it this way as a way to project the season, right? Because I can sort of see how the trends have folded, right? We had the Philadelphia Eagles last year. We've had some teams. I think Houston had a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl last year with the Deshaun Watson situation.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Wow. I mean, maybe not
without Watt.
Without Watt.
I think this year, assuming Deshaun Watson continues
so
what
that's
he
where I'm
did
going.
last year in only 6 games,
so
that's a very small
With
sample
Hopkins,
in my mind.
yes.
But with Clowney and Watt and they're a
DeAndre
really
Hopkins, right?
Yeah, they're a last to first,
especially
team.
a year later with all those guys sort of buying into the system. Yeah, they're on this list. So there's like 5 teams who are under $10 million in quarterback spending, and I like to start there when I'm breaking down the positional spending because, like I said, that generally can lead to a really good successful year if you've spent wisely elsewhere, right? But you've got the Rams, you've got the Houston Texans, the Chiefs, and you've got the Eagles there. Okay, so all low with their quarterback money. And I'm not just talking about the starter. I'm talking about the backups because you've got some teams like Arizona. You've got Arizona spending $20 million on Sam Bradford. I'm not even sure he's going to play, right? I mean, you could have him and Rosen at a combined $25 million in cap, and maybe Rosen gets every snap out there. But
because they have Rosen, they can afford to do it though.
They can, but what I'm saying is there's teams that didn't do that. They chose not to go that route. Like they're
cheap.
All in on their rookie. Their backup's worth $1 million, and maybe not even. There's teams who have literally bought into we're gonna spend nothing on the quarterback while we can, and hope it works out, and hope our guy doesn't get injured like Houston, and spend our money elsewhere, and load up on our interior defense and our outside edge and the things that have worked over the years. That's really the process that have happened. What we haven't seen is a quarterback who's dirt cheap sort of take it through to the finish line until last year. And really with Foles, you can talk about Foles because he was the backup, but it was Foles plus Wentz was dirt cheap and it worked throughout for 21 games throughout the year, right? That's what I'm looking for here when I start this breakdown. And I think the Rams are definitely in that conversation based on their offense versus defense. The Chiefs are maybe in that conversation. There's a lot riding on Patrick Mahomes. I'm not sure.
A lot on a guy that we don't know enough about.
And they had to give up a hell of a lot on defense over the past 2 years just because of their cap. They went through some cap hell for like 2.5 off seasons, really, and the defense just got shredded. And then they gave way too much money to Eric Berry. They gave way too much money to Sammy Watkins. So there's maybe a little bit of ebb and flow with how their cap is structured versus what the production may be on the field. We'll see how that all works out. But they're paying Mahomes nothing, obviously, so this is the window for them to sort of bust out value production. We'll see. To me, Houston might be atop this list. I think I might put Houston above the Los Angeles Rams right now. I know Todd Gurley's there. I know he signed. And that was a good move, by the way. We've talked about that before on this podcast. That was a good move to get him done at age 23 because it sets them and him up for better success financially. But I think I like Houston as the value team in terms of quarterback spending. I like how they're spending wide receiver versus running back, and that's the next conversation here. I just sort of think they have it figured out. To me, the bloated contract right now is Watt because he's been injured twice.
Yeah.
He's maybe on the backside, right? He's definitely on the backside of that contract, which is high. It's bloated because of it.
He's got to prove he can stay healthy.
Yeah,
he's a
big
high
year for him.
motor, 150% effort guy, and I think some of the injuries have come from that.
Yeah, and I almost put their long-term success on him right now. I know Watson had the ACL, and that's going to be difficult, but all signs point to him being fine, and if he's even 75% of what he was for, what is it, 6 games?
6 starts. Yeah,
6 starts.
Games.
If he's even 75% of that to start the year, I think that's a team, probably the team to watch in the AFC, not named, New England and Pittsburgh and those. But in terms of the value quarterback position or teams that we're talking about here, I think Texans and the Rams are the ones to watch. Let's flip the switch just a little bit because my next breakdown that I really wanted to dive into was obviously the running back position because we're at a plateau now, and I think we're getting better. I think we've talked about this in the last episode. We have the Gurley signing. We're going to have Bell. We're going to have David Johnson in the next 18 months here. There's going to be some guys who sneak in. Ezekiel Elliott will need a deal in the next 18 to 24 months. So you're going to have some of these wide receiver running backs, right? These slash running backs who are going to get paid. And what we've seen from like Jerick McKinnon and from Gurley now is that if the offense can run through you, we've got a guy like that here in Buffalo with McCoy. If the offense runs through you, it's going to be perfectly fine to overpay you. And that will do wonders for this running back market. We're not there. We're not there yet. In fact, if you look at the numbers we have on SpotTrack in the positional spending tool, and I've broken it down a little bit, it's 2-to-1 right now.
Wide receivers to
running backs in terms of cap
That's the
spending.
game. That's the NFL
game. And that's
game.
not to say that they're right now with 90 people on the roster, these teams are running with about 6 running backs and 6 to 7 wide receivers. So it's equal in terms of the bodies on the roster right now. And just the cap is literally 2-to-1. So it's a passing league, but I see that breaking. You're going to see your Odell Beckhams come out and say, I need 20 to 22 million a year. You just saw nice contracts for Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, Stephon Diggs, but those guys got market contracts. None of those guys went out and said, I need, above market 20 million, 22 million because I'm worth it. Those guys all sort of get what's happening, right? They're on rosters right now where the spread open offense, the slash, the multiple roles, the offenses are sort of evolving on those teams, and I don't think the Giants have done that yet. And the Giants will need to do that with Saquon Barkley. And they may need to get rid of Eli Manning to do it, because they need to get cheaper there, most likely after this year.
That would seem to me to be
and
likely
he's not that
based
kind of
on,
player.
Manning, I think, has got a couple of years left anyway.
Yeah, but
there was a serious debate whether he had any years left with the Giants.
I think there's a good chance this is his last year in New York.
I think you're right about that.
Because I think that team needs to evolve, and that's really one of the reasons I think they won't push forward with Odell Beckham Jr. So my point here is, while I think the running back market, it will improve quickly, and you'll start to see cap numbers and things like that rise with running backs, I think it may level off with the wide receivers just because we've seen the evolution of the depth and how guys, that $14, $15, $16 million mark is becoming the norm for the elite wide receiver, and you're able to keep your cap numbers lower that way when your AAV and your guaranteed money and your signing bonuses are mitigated a little bit. But I think anybody giving Odell Beckham Jr. the contract he wants would be damning to that team because I think of where the things are evolving and the finances will go with it.
Can I ask about Khalil Mack?
Yes, please.
And his contract. Why is this not done?
I heard an interesting explanation for why this is done. I'm going to let Mike answer your question
go
first
ahead.
And see if it has something to do with it.
No, dive in.
Chris Mortensen I heard on ESPN Radio during the week, and he talked a little bit about Khalil's going to get a pretty significant guarantee and a lot of money up front. And the theory was that the Raiders are cash poor. They've always been cash poor. Yes. They're cash poor now until they get to Vegas.
which usually is the opposite. You go to Vegas, they become cash
right.
poor. Right.
The way he explained it was when you sign a big contract that has guarantees, the team is on the hook immediately for the guaranteed money to go into escrow.
Yes.
So maybe the Raiders don't have 30, 40, whatever $1 million Khalil Mack is going to get guaranteed. Maybe they just don't have the money right now. Is there anything to that?
There's 100% to that. They've invested a lot in defensively. They've made some bad moves too, so they're eating some cash right now that maybe is holding them back a little bit. But yeah, I would assume with the move of the franchise, let's be honest, they gave John Gruden $100 million, right? They've
right.
None of that really applies to their cap escrow and things like that. But there are some bad contracts that they're sort of getting over. I'm not sure they're 100% sold on Derek Carr long term, so they may be in a position where they need to flip that in the next 2 years or so. And look they control Khalil Mack. This is business. He's on a 5th-year option. There's still 2 franchise tags to come if they want it. I did a tweet the other day. Somebody asked me this exact question. If you put it all together, if you put together his 5th-year option and then 3 franchise tags, which is as much as humanly possible a team could handle, you're talking $82 million over 4 years. Right? So right off the bat, you're talking $21 million, right?
Yeah.
Right up without even trying.
It's about equivalent to what he would get on a multi-year deal, right?
Which is why there's really no discussion, right? Like his agent and the market and anywhere you look, it's going to be $20 to $21 million a year for Khalil Mack and any of these guys, the Clowneys and the Aaron Donalds. I mean, that's just what there's a process in place with the franchise tag system that literally allows you to basically go out and say, this is the number we're starting with, and there's really no talking about it any other way. Because if you want a franchise tag us 3 times, that sucks, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
And we've seen more guys take it than usual, and it's because of this. It's because the money is maximum. So there's really no give and take. I mean, Khalil Mack has been great. He had a little bit of a down year last year. I mean, just the production was a little down, and the team was kind of down around him.
Production was so good the 2 years before that.
He's been outstanding ever since starting.
When does he have to show up to not affect his ability to be a free agent at the end of this year? Like, what's the drop dead time when you know he'll show up for Raiders camp?
Look, I think he'll be here week 1.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he'll be here.
Okay, there's no. I thought somewhere along the line there was a 30-day situation where if you're not in camp, report within 30 days of the opener, it affects your contract status. Is that not the case?
So yeah, he could lose a year of eligibility, which would make him like a restricted free agent. But that won't be the case on a 5th-year option. No, let me tell you, this is going to go. He'll be here. They're not going to pay him. They're not going to pay him this year. He's going to get a franchise tag in February, okay? It's just going to happen. It's just the way we're going. Let me tell you another thing. I think Aaron Donald sits out the whole season.
Wow.
Whoa.
I think he sits out the whole season. I think he becomes a restricted free agent, and I think they franchise tag him, all right? Because that's what the Rams do to defensive players. They just do it. I think it's a tool that's there. I think it stinks that it's there.
As good as the Rams have a chance to be Super Bowl champions this year, would they take the chance of not having their best defensive player part of that?
Look, there's a reason they got Ndamukong Suh.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. Is that part of the thinking there?
There's a reason, all right? He's not Aaron Donald, especially at this age, and he's not going to rush the passer like Aaron Donald can rush the passer.
That's a pretty good plan B.
But if they got to roll with it, I think they'll roll with it because I think it's a similar situation where they've got cash that they can't burn right now, and Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack are pretty much, carbon copies of their market values here. So,
they're both trying to be the first defensive players to hit the 20 million mark, right?
That's right.
There's probably a sense of pride involved in that.
Well, I was going to say they want $100 million contracts.
Right.
Because
there's never been a defensive player at 20 million. Is that correct?
No, Von Miller at 19.1 is the max.
Okay,
and the big number is 62 million guaranteed.
Okay,
that's sort of like the number to look at, and 35 of that is probably guaranteed right up front. So to your point, 35 hits the escrow right away. Yeah. So cash-wise, it's extremely difficult because, you've got the Rams doling out contracts left and right. You've got the Raiders sort of in flux. Like I said, it's a little bit different because Goff's going to need a contract in, maybe 18 months here as well if he has another MVP candidate year. So I don't expect either of these guys to get paid until February when the franchise tag is slapped on them. And quite frankly, like I said, I'm an advocate for this thing getting tossed out the window, the franchise tag, because it's become a crutch more than it has a tool to get a deal done, right? It's evolved into I'm going to slap this on you so you can go nowhere, right? It's not a, we just need more time to get it done because we need to make some things happen and get more money. That hasn't happened. That doesn't happen anymore, okay? I mean, all the guys who got tagged this year are playing on the tag.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need any more evidence than that.
Good thing Khalil Mack has that sponsorship deal with Mack Trucks. That's his only source of income right now.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, he has a great
makes a hell of a lot
sponsorship
of
with
sense.
Mack Trucks. They've done videos and commercials with him.
Did they make him a hood ornament?
I'm sure they have.
Khalil Mack at a 3-point stance on the front of your Mack
That's
truck?
almost as intimidating as the Bulldog that's on the Mack truck.
Yes, it would be. I think that'd be fantastic.
So here's a discussion. Is there any issue with that endorsement if he sits out all year?
That's a good question. Do
I mean,
you think that
if he's-
contractually? Do you think that would be in a sponsorship contract?
Absolutely, it would
Yeah,
be.
I mean,
Kidding?
you need his
But he's
butt
still
on
he's
TV
still
every
the
Sunday, right?
star. I mean, he's still
Yeah, but doesn't he go away if he's not on TV every Sunday?
Yes and no. I mean, in the world we live in, if you're not appearing every day, you go away.
Yeah.
But he's still Khalil Mack. You know.
We can find another Mac.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's always another Mac.
Yep.
They could bring back Kevin Mack from the Browns back in the day. All right. There's an old jersey that would be okay to wear.
That would be okay to wear.
All right.
No,
That's
no,
good.
Not so much in Cleveland, though. I don't think.
No.
Yeah, there's a little sore spot there with that.
Fumble. All right. Anyway, that does it for today's edition of the SpotTrack.com podcast. A lot of ground we cover with the baseball and football there. Be sure to sign up for the premium service. You get Mike's breakdowns each week, an audio version, the special podcast. You get a contract breakdown there and other access points. Make sure you get the app if you haven't downloaded that yet on your smartphone.
The app is great.
And be sure to rate us on iTunes. I said rate us, not rate us. I know it sounded close to that since we're talking about the Raiders. All right, for Mike Giannetti and Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast.